Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's 6 sessions. Firstly, apologies for the slight technical hitch. You'd think after 50 odd episodes of this I'd actually figure it out, but obviously not. It's that delightful time of the week where I get to press pause on the day job and instead spend an hour with some of the most groundbreaking minds and innovative souls in the growth arena. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to someone who has been steering mobility, startup success, and commercial achievements across the globe. Our guest has been at the forefront of the smart mobility revolution, championing not only the logistical, but also the environmental and social aspects of organized transportation. We're going to discuss going from idea through to successful exit and the challenges of founding a tech startup. And given this chat is entirely around growth, we're going to talk about how Zeelo, the company he co-founded, has achieved such rapid growth despite a pandemic. We're gonna hear some advice born from success and probably from some mistakes of building a commercial team in a fast-paced tech startup. We're going to talk about where our guest would invest his time and efforts if he rolled the dice again, knowing what he knows now from 2 successful startups. And we'll be talking about going from startup to corporate and back to startup. And we're going to talk about the pros and cons of being a tech entrepreneur. In short, prepare yourself to journey through the lanes of smart mobility, exploring the highways and byways of startups, examining the crossroads of exits, and venturing in the unexplored territories of balancing mission-driven initiatives with steady, scalable growth. And every pun was absolutely intended. If you're interested in rapid growth in a tech startup context, today is the episode for you. But of course, this is the 6 sessions, so expect insights that are not always succinct, conversations that are unfiltered and honest, and stories that will hopefully not land either of us in prison. Joining us from Boston, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Barney Williams, co-founder and chief commercial officer of Zeelo. Barney, welcome.
Thanks, Rich. Very good introduction.
And honestly, I was like, how many more puns can I get out through this whole thing? And I was like, I'm actually going to dial it back a notch. So that was like the second iteration of that.
I like
so, first up, how was Q3 for Zeelo?
Good question. I feel like it's been like a tale of 2 halves, really. First half of the quarter was pretty tough. I think everyone was on their sun loungers, not making any decisions. And then actually, the last month or so has been like pretty incredible how it's turned around, and we've seen some pretty rapid growth, and that's kind of continuing into Q4. And we're also making pretty good headway in the US now, which is also pretty exciting for us. So yeah, all in all, it feels pretty encouraging. If you asked me 2 months ago, I would have said something probably slightly different. But so far, all in all, it's been pretty good.
Well, I did see you in a bar in Boston about a month ago, and you were looking pretty relaxed. It may not have had anything to do with Zeelo. But so that improvement was. Do you think that is like a market shift? So like people coming back to work after summer holidays type thing, or have you changed something internally? Did you change product, model, sales process?
Yeah, I think if you look at like this year in general, like across all businesses and everyone I've spoken to who's in sales has said that this year is like genuinely been a bit tougher. But what I think we're seeing is that, and what I'm hearing is that actually that is shifting pretty quickly, and companies are starting to open their checkbooks up again. And there seems to be kind of more willingness to invest in new things, new initiatives, which is great. So I think for us, like we actually we didn't change anything too dramatically. We just stuck to our guns. Something that we've learned a lot over the kind of previous 4 or 5 years is focus is like the most important thing. So we didn't want to like panic and knee jerk. We stuck to our guns, and luckily that's kind of paid off. So yeah, not really anything. I think it's just a shift in market sentiment just across the board is what we're seeing.
We are starting to get to my favorite time of the year where people are like, shit, we've got budget, we need to spend it before they tell us we're not going to have the same amount of budget next year. So it's always wild in Q4. So what is Zeelo and what is your role?
So Zeelo is a tech transit company providing corporate commuting programs for companies and for schools. So my role is co-founder and chief commercial officer. So effectively my role is to keep the company growing ultimately, as simple as that. I focus heavily on kind of opening doors and making sure that we're pulling the right levers efficiently to grow faster effectively. So I have the marketing function and sales under my in my remit, and kind of work with those teams closely to make sure that we are constantly growing, learning, getting better, moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and getting the growth done and hitting targets ultimately.
So I'm always interested to understand like the structure of commercial teams. So we internally, we refer to ours as our growth team. So we have a Charlotte, who is our growth director. She owns sales and marketing under that. And she now carries the number for CS's, like cross-sell upsell as well.
Yeah.
What is the structure of your team, and kind of what is the makeup of the people who are kind of working in the team beneath you?
So we keep it pretty simple, actually. We have a marketing function that sits centrally. Has the classic marketing team members there. So performance marketing, content, CRM, and they work very, very, very closely with the sales team. Sales team is split effectively in two or three rather. So kind of general managers who act as effectively BD directors within certain verticals. They have SDR supporting them, and sales managers in their teams as well. So they're kind of that's kind of how we structure it, and we make sure that like sales and marketing is effectively one commercial function. Like, I mean, I don't think they should even be called sales and marketing. They should just be one team ultimately. And it's so important. We really push that hard. So they all sit together. They talk about their targets daily, regularly, hourly, hopefully. And basically work together to try and drive leads and get stuff closed. So it's pretty basic setup, but works well for us and keeps us really, really focused.
I think simple is good.
Yeah.
So in terms of that alignment piece, do marketing and sales share a number?
So yeah, so they're aligned to a revenue target ultimately.
Okay.
That's the kind of headline target. And then they have individual targets that kind of break down, that are broken down to achieve that number ultimately. So marketing will have MQL targets and we call them SAO, sales accepted opportunity targets, where effectively they're bringing in MQLs, but they only get awarded once the sales manager goes, yeah, that's a good opportunity. And then obviously the sales managers are targeted on revenue, and they're all aligned to an overall number that we're focused on.
Nice. So, an important question. So both founders are British. How the hell did you end up in Boston? Normally, historically, the English have been thrown the other way.
I don't really know. No, it's been a bit of a whirlwind journey. I mean, we founded in London in 2017. Have been in the UK for 4 or 5 years, and got to a point where we saw the opportunity in the US, and what we're finding is that the pain points we're solving, which I'm sure we'll come on to later, are basically being replicated over here. And so we actually had a very helpful angel investor who recommended Boston over other cities on the East Coast. We wanted to be on the East Coast because it's closer to get back to London. And actually Boston's been great. It's a really well-connected city. Lots of smart people here because of the universities that are here. Lots of investors as well, which has been great. And we've met some really great advisors. And also it's a really, really nice city. So it's been just quite nice personally moving over here. So Sam's the co-founder and CEO. We've been friends for a while, too long probably. And we decided that the UK was in a really great place. We've got a great team over there, led by our now UK MD, who was our CFO, a chap called John Slingsby. And we were like, you know what, this is a really important part of the company for us. We have to get the US motoring. So rather than sit in our kind of ivory tower in London, let's get stuck into the action in over here. So we're now here full time. And yeah, it's been great actually, and super exciting because we're starting to see it really motor, which is awesome.
So are you both the exception to the rule of never work with your friends? Because it seems to be going okay.
I like to think so. I mean, we've learned how to work with each other and how to have like personal lives outside of work. We were friends at school originally. We were 16, I think, when we actually met for the first time. Ended up going to the same university together, not because we wanted to, just by pure chance. And then started our first company out of university, sold that company, worked together for the company that bought our first company, and then have started another company. So we know a lot about each other, and I think what's important and what we've learned is that we know what each other are good at, and we're kind of like within our lanes, which I think is important. So Sam is focused heavily on strategy, investment, and overall kind of company structure and growth, and I'm focused kind of primarily on sales and marketing effectively. So we've learned about each other and what our strengths are and what our weaknesses are, and that's been pretty important in how we've kind of, I guess, not killed each other. It's been great actually.
So I see today as well, you've just announced a partnership with Mobility Ways. What is that, and how does that aid in the mission of decarbonisation of the commute? I've taken those words directly from the press release.
Absolutely, yeah. So Mobility Ways are an awesome company actually. So they're based in the UK. They have actually they were born out of COVID actually. So they also have a kind of company within their portfolio called LiftShare, which is a car sharing platform.
Mm-hmm.
I think COVID made them think about how they go to market, how they can help companies. And they Mobility Ways was born. And Mobility Ways is basically helping companies understand that the carbon they're creating from their commuting. So they take in kind of all forms of they track all the metrics in terms of how many people are driving to those workplaces each day, what public transport options they have available, how they can offer something that's more sustainable. So where we fit in with them is that we work with them on identifying certain clients that want to track their carbon emissions created from commuting, and then could potentially lead to a private shuttle program offered by Zeelo to help reduce that the number of car trips to the site. So yeah, we're working hand in hand with them on a few projects right now. One of them for Prologis in the Midlands in the UK, which has worked really well. We're seeing some unbelievable transition from people driving on their own to actually transitioning to a green shuttle service, right? So every Zeelo on the ground takes 30 cars off the road on average. So we're having like pretty profound impact there, and they're helping us, and we're helping them hopefully deliver some great results for the clients, and that's what it's all about. Working in partnership to try and make commuting greener effectively.
A question just popped into my mind, and I have totally not briefed you on this, and it's going to verge on the political, so by all means tell me to do one. But what is so like the backtracking on the like green policies in the UK, what kind of effect is that going to have on a business like yours, and kind of, or even the positioning of a business like yours?
Yeah, good question. I think ultimately, companies feel like they do have they take on the responsibility themselves anyway. I don't agree with it. I don't think it's the right thing to do. But we're solving problems for companies that we're trying to solve the carbon created from commuting, but also we are solving other business needs such as recruitment and retention of staff or parking pressures. So really for us, it's like we're focused on the companies that genuinely need a solution to help solve a business problem, and that could be sustainability reasons, that could be recruitment and retention reasons, as I mentioned. So I don't think it changed anything too much for us. I'm disappointed for sure. I think a lot of people are, and it's slightly baffling to me in all honesty, considering what's going on in the world. But we just have to react to that and stick to our guns and help solve problems for companies ultimately, which is what we're doing. And that could be a variety of things.
I genuinely feel baffling is a pretty good description of British politics. Anyway, so Zeelo's not your first rodeo. So you had a previous startup called Jump In, and you went from idea to growth to successful exit. What were some of the key moments in that adventure, and any pivotal decisions that shaped the journey? You might want to give like a brief synopsis of what Jump In was and kind of where you ended up.
Yeah, sure. So Jump In was effectively a ride-sharing platform for communities. So the idea was that you could share rides and make it kind of cost-effective for people to travel to where they needed to go to. We founded the company in university, so at the University of Leeds, where we were studying, and really focused on the student market initially because it was students who live in the same area traveling to various places, normally nightclubs in all honesty. but it made it really like cost effective and efficient for people to get to where they needed to go to. So it was a really cool product and worked pretty well. It was kind of before like Uber Pool was a thing, so it was kind of before its time in that regard. But because of the kind of closed community aspect of it, it worked really well. So people, we're saving money on taking trips, but also meeting people actually through Jump In, which is pretty cool. That kind of scale to 5 cities in the UK. It wasn't a massive company. It wasn't a huge exit. It was, we were kind of bootstrapped out of university. I think some of the pivotal moments were like taking the plunge, in all honesty. So, we were studying and then we managed to get our degree somehow, kind of in tangent with running this company. And we, it was quite a big jump, leaving university, everyone going to these kind of corporate jobs. And we were like, screw it. Let's just go with it. And let's just launch Jump In and we'll literally jump in. So we found like a sort of office space in London, built a small team and just kind of kept the growth going, raised a very small amount of money. So I think like some of the pivotal moments were taking the plunge initially, like just getting on with it and going for it. And that's something I would recommend to anyone if they've got an idea, go for it. There's not, the hardest part is starting, like for sure. And I think that being said, I had my best mate with me along the way, so that made things a lot easier. So definitely a lesson in like pick who you work with.
Yeah.
Luckily it's worked for us.
I can all but guarantee though, I mean, I know you said it's not like a big exit and like a small kind of entity at that point, but I guarantee you learned more from that than you did in the entire 3 years at university.
Yeah, quite possibly. I hope no one from University of Leeds is watching. I had a lot at the University of Leeds, but yeah, I mean, we really learned a lot. We have some amazing stories about signing up because we basically partnered with like private taxi fleets effectively, and two scruffy students going to taxi firms across Leeds trying to sign them up, saying work with us, we're going to give you business. That was pretty damn tough. Like that was us going to all sorts of areas around Leeds.
Was this? It was about 2012, 2013ish, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so
so like yeah. Uber was only just becoming a thing as well. So you were like pretty much at the start of the curve.
Yeah, Halo was a big app around there. I don't know if you remember Halo. That was the kind of first like taxi app in London, which was pretty like groundbreaking at the time. Uber was getting big in the US. Like Uber was always going to be big, right? But it hadn't hit the ground running in the UK yet. But then when it did, obviously, the taxi space changed forever ultimately. So yeah, we're kind of a bit ahead of that. And I think that's what led to the exit. So we exited to Addison Lee, who were Europe's largest private hire company, big focus on B2B. Brilliant company, like fantastic company. Built an amazing business. And actually the CEO at the time, Liam Griffin, is now on our board at Zeelo actually. So he's kind of followed us and supported us from day one. So he's been amazing. But like they had an incredible company, and it was really interesting being like inside there as Uber was expanding rapidly, right? And how their business was being disrupted and how they had to navigate those kind of slightly choppy waters. But it was great being part of it, and hopefully we helped out. So we helped them rebrand the company and also help them rebuild their digital products to try and like compete with Uber, which was an incredible challenge. But and luckily they came out of it pretty well and are now thriving. And Liam's actually back as the CEO. So yeah, it's a cool story, and it was really really great seeing it on the inside and learning a lot from those times.
So looking back at your time with both Jump In and Zeelo, what were some of the growth obstacles you had to overcome?
There's been a lot. I think I probably relate to Zeelo. I mean, Zeelo's been kind of 7 years in the making now, so we've actually been at it for quite a long time. I think the first obstacle I can think about was just basically understanding our product market fit, and we messed around. If I'm honest, we didn't mess around. We were trying our best to figure out where best to focus actually, and testing lots of things. So like we actually started off with partnering with like major event companies and major football and rugby teams actually. So Zeelo basically uses data to build convenient shuttle routes for the use case. So, and we have a kind of data platform that allows us to do that really efficiently. It started off with kind of football and rugby fans, traveling to the game. The selling point for the club was, boost fan retention, reduce the pressures on the car parks to the home games, and that's a pretty big challenge actually across all the major clubs in the UK. And it worked really well, but I think it was never kind of it was never really going to be it wasn't really our ambition to take football fans to games every day or every week or every other week rather. We wanted to change habits daily for people that are traveling daily. So figuring that out and working out that actually these are our ideal client profiles, these are the selling points, and repeating that was like the first challenge, and that, like, just getting the first like B2B deal over the line, like when you haven't done it before, is like hard, like really hard. Like, who's going to buy from a company that has got no case studies, no track history? And we were selling to pretty big companies when we figured out that the corporates was the way to go. So that's a tough hurdle, right? And then once you get the initial case study and the proof points, and it becomes a bit easier, and you figure out how to make things more streamlined, more effective, and get it to a point where it becomes repetitive. So we kind of transitioned really from almost like a B2C to B product to a fully B2B product during that period, and that was pretty challenging.
So I think we, as an agency, went through a very similar transition. So we actually started out in high net worth B2C, and then decided that it was a very, very transactional market. And so we made the decision to move across to B2B, much more structured sales process, but longer and kind of more hurdles. It was the first time we would ever come into contact with the CFO and kind of those kind of things. It's a very different sales process. So you run a sales team. How do you assess and improve sales activity and effectiveness over time? Do you use any like frameworks like MedPick or anything like that? Like, how are you getting better over time?
Yeah. Again, we keep it simple. I'm kind of like a stuck record, but we do try and keep things simple here. And we track the ROI of each channel. And by channel, I mean the marketing channels that you expect, but also the SDRs, the sales managers. Basically, is what we're spending at the top resulting in a positive ROI at the bottom? And so we're tracking that pretty religiously each quarter. And then on top of that, obviously, there's the standard metrics like win rate, sales cycle, that we're constantly trying to optimize to make ourselves better and more efficient. But ultimately, it's about that return on investment. It makes sense, right? We spend X, we get Y back, and that's what we're focusing on for each of our channels. And then fundamentally, whether we're hitting the targets or not, because if we're not, then something's not going right. So that's how we track it. We use Medic actually for like qualification. I wouldn't say we're perfect at that. I think we're still trying to get better at it. It's always very tempting to fast track a deal if you think it's a big name, for example. So we're getting better at the more we've learned about that and the pain it can cause if you don't qualify things properly. We learned that the hard way. Back in the day, we had this big deal that was going to fundamentally change the face of the company. We had about 10 people in the business at the time, and we were like, we've got it. We're all in. We're let's hire around it, because it's going to change the face of the company, double revenue overnight. And shock horror, what happens? We tell the board, everyone gets excited. 2 days later, get a phone call from the person that we thought was the decision maker, but clearly wasn't, to say, sorry, things have changed. Speak to us next year. Like, shit, okay, that's a problem. So we learned the hard way, right? But I do fundamentally believe that it's about keeping it simple. I also fundamentally believe that decision makers are the most important thing when it comes to sales, because there's always one person in the organization that you're selling to that is going to make the call ultimately, and you have to speak to them somehow, whether that's through your champion or directly. I think there's just kind of like this perception that those people are like, these people sitting on their pedestal, like not like real humans, almost like robots. But it's rubbish, right? They are normal people like you and I. They want to know that we're going to kind of do everything we can to help them solve the problem that we're trying to solve for them. And I think they want to know their suppliers. So we focus heavily on that now. and that requires a bit more time and effort and energy, but it should be worth it in the long run.
Do you, like, with things like deals, do you track sort of like relationships and how many people you've got from the prospect side involved in the deal? So you're actually looking at what is the structure, what is actually going on outside of just that kind of one-to-one selling.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we try and piece together like a map almost, or an org chart that we focus on. But again, like it's not about the number of people; it's about the quality of those people, how influential they are in the organization. Like it's fundamentally getting to understand like how the organization runs and how it operates. And going back to the point, that there is always one person that ultimately they can turn up one day having a bad day, and they go, "What we're doing here is pointless." Like, and if they don't know like the value that we're going to add, then they're obviously going to say that, right? They don't want to spend money if they don't have to. So we need to speak to them. We need to get to know them. And once we get to know those types of people and those folks at that kind of higher level, then they help you. They do like helping. That's ultimately what their role is, right? To work out where they can add value for their own organization. And if we're adding value in one place, maybe they can pass on to a similar person in a different part of the business that we can work with. So yeah, I think that just comes down to that ultimately at the end of the day.
Out of interest, what is your best performing channel?
It's actually at the moment our what we call like sales manager outreach or land and expand. We've one of the things that we've learned over the last couple of years is that once you have an account, it's not gonna it can grow, right? It can grow quickly, and so focusing on winning business where we have the opportunity to expand has been like pretty pivotal. So we have the sales managers linked very closely with our customer success team, and they kind of work in tangent and have a shared goal to grow clients in certain ways, and that's been really great for us. I think it goes back to the point around like the initial sell into a company is tougher and normally a bit slower, but once you're in there and you identify opportunities and they trust you and they like you and we have a good working relationship, then it can expand really quickly. So that's been great for us. And then actually our performance marketing PPC has actually been really great as well. We've got a really smart team looking at that, and I like that because you can so easily track the ROI, right? It's just simple.
Money in, money out.
Yeah, exactly. And you can always get better and go faster on those channels and try different things and test quickly. So that's actually been really great for us, and is something that we're trying to focus on quite heavily, because if that ramps, then inbound's the gold, right? We love inbound. And more of that, the more of that, the better, really.
So given your experience, battle scars, war wounds, of leading a commercial team across 2 successful startups now, if you were to roll the dice again and start a new venture, what would you do differently in the initial stages to ensure growth and stability?
I think we'd like get all over the ideal client profile before we do anything. Links to like product market fit, but also links to like how are we positioning ourselves? What are the pain points we're solving? What are the metrics we're putting in front of people to show that we're adding value? That took us 2 or 3 years to figure out, quite honestly. And also it's not solved by any stretch. So we're always adapting and being like super dynamic to try and make sure that our messaging, everything is really clear, and we're hitting the right notes when it comes to the pain points we're solving. So I think like getting all over that ideal client profile before making any like team decisions, hiring decisions, whatever, and like selling as founders, initially to like learn about that and try and get a few things over the line. That's certainly what I would do. I think we probably rushed into maybe making some hiring decisions that we didn't need to make because we thought, okay, we've got a couple of clients, let's go. But actually we'd like been smarter about it, just took our time and worked out the kind of type of person we wanted to hire, and the clients we're targeting. That would have probably been, we would have been more effective, quite honestly. And you can only figure that out once you go out and do it, right? So I think that's kind of one thing. I think another thing is that we got very lost in like metrics over the years, thinking that we had to track everything and like everything was important, and like, oh my god, this company's telling us that their win rate's X and ours is only Y, and like getting like stressed about it, and like actually it does come back to, what we're spending is resulting in a good ROI, and like keeping that simple, and then making sure everyone is like aligned to a certain goal collectively is something that that like it's been really game changing for us actually, and making sure that we know the metrics that we're tracking give us, you know, good return and are the important things to talk about, and that then links to like how if I were to do it again, you know, I would make the sales and marketing function like one unit from day one. It was slightly separate at the start for us because I think it's such a common thing, right? I'm sure when you speak to other people, they say the same thing, but they are ultimately aiming for the same thing, which is to grow the company. So their metrics have to be aligned, incentive structures need to be aligned. They need to sit next to each other and talk to each other every freaking day. And if I was to do it again, I would just make that happen sooner, because I think we would have grown quickly back then.
I mean, don't kick yourself. We're an agency who are supposed to be doing these things, and I think our sales and marketing have only been aligned for about 2 years now. So there was a long period of time where they were very separate.
Yeah, and it's just like, when you think about it, it just makes no sense, right? Ultimately, the most important thing is growing and hitting targets. So let's get your commercial teams to think the same way, work towards the same goal, and you do see like amazing results once you get that kind of cadence and way of working sorted.
So the past few years has thrown some curveballs at businesses. How did Zeelo, a company deeply rooted in mobility and transportation, essentially a business reliant on people moving, pivot or adapt during the shitstorm that was COVID? How did you maintain the growth trajectory?
Yeah, like,
I mean, there must have been some squeaky bum moments in there.
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, like shuttle buses and COVID just, you know, clearly go hand in hand. No, it was pretty crazy. So we focus on 3 segments at Zeelo. We focus on logistics and distribution centers and warehouses. So, you know, tend to be like frontline workers, companies like Amazon, UPS, etc. We also then work with large corporate HQs, so companies that have like you know, a big out of town office park, business park that's poorly served by public transportation, and then we also work with schools. But before COVID, we didn't work with the distribution logistics sectors. We were thinking about it, but we hadn't like got on with working out how we go out and partner with those types of companies. So overnight, we effectively lost 90% of our revenue when, you know,
nice. Yeah, that must have been uncomfortable.
Yeah, all the HQs were like, I'm really sorry, but like, we're going to close the office, so we don't need buses going there each day, and schools, you know, the same. So that was interesting, and there were genuine discussions around, okay, shall we just hibernate, furlough everyone, and kind of see it out? And it's just really against our nature, if I'm honest, as founders, to do that. So with Sam and also Danny, our other co-founder, who's based out of Barcelona, he's our CTO, who's runs our engineering team. We were like, you know what, let's just go on the attack, because we may as well, because at the moment we're doing, you know, we're not going to do very well if we just stay as we are. So we effectively wrote a blog post saying, if any key workers need transportation to get them to work, because, you know, public transit was closing down, for example, people who were car sharing or relying on lifts no longer could do that, or the companies weren't allowing them to. And it fundamentally changed our business overnight, that one blog post, because it forced us to change our sales approach. Previously, we were like, okay, we're selling to big companies, you know, it's corporates, let's do a kind of consultative approach. Wouldn't this be great? You know, 6-month sales cycles, blah, blah, blah. We had to like go, bollocks to that. We are going full out sales attack, everyone on the phones, you know, hustle. And it just worked. Like that, yes, the market conditions helped us, because, you know, big warehouse locations where, you know, e-commerce was booming, right? You know, everyone was ordering stuff online, so they were ramping, actually, they were growing, and people forget that there are thousands of people that go to work each day at those big warehouses, and they need to get there, and it's normally antisocial times. They may not be earning a corporate salary, so can't rely on getting a car and traveling by car each day. So those people, like, they are fundamentally stuck, and they can't find work if they don't have a link like Zeelo. And so the market helped us in that regard, because it allowed us, our product just worked for that sort of use case. And at the same time, companies are trying to hire and retain people, so needed like added benefits to attract people to those sites. But actually, for us internally, it just made us realize that it doesn't matter how big the sale, if it's a big B2B sale or a tiny little SaaS deal, hustle and sales energy is fundamental. And thank God it happened, actually, because, and we're very lucky, like, don't get me wrong, I know companies struggled and stuff, and it was a pretty terrible time, obviously, but we all just sat there and just hammered the sales. And
hustle pre-COVID, the whole kind of hustle culture got a bad rap, but it
100%.
it does have its place, and it does seem to have made more of a comeback. I'm not saying tech bro hustle culture, but I think being able to hustle in the sales process has definitely made a comeback.
Absolutely, and I say it's like people ask about that and go, "Oh God, that sounds a bit uncomfortable." Hustle, like, oh God. But it doesn't mean you have to be an arsehole. You can hustle and be a lovely chap, you know. So I think like it just changed the mindset for us, and effectively we haven't stopped really since COVID with that mindset, and that's hopefully been fed down to the teams. For whoever works in the commercial team now understands what we mean by pace and what we mean by energy and hustle, and it comes from the top. I still personally do outreach myself. I just I think it's fundamental. I think sales is the most important thing. You have to keep growing.
I do it sometimes because I find it interesting. Like I like to see what works and how people respond. So I'm experimenting more than chasing a target. But I find it one of the most enlightening processes that I'm still actively involved in.
Yeah, absolutely. And you learn so much. Exactly, you learn so much, and you know what messages land. You can adapt accordingly, and I think like being dynamic alongside the hustle, like not just kind of running around like busy fools. Making informed changes to how you go about selling is like critical. And we changed a lot of our messaging over the last year or so based on the change in market. So yeah, I think it was actually pretty amazing, the COVID growth. We grew like over 1,000%. It was crazy. And yeah, thank God it can happen in a way. I know it's not the same for a lot of companies, and it's pretty awful, but we were one of the lucky ones. But it didn't happen. It didn't happen by chance. It happened because we took action ultimately.
So developing a commercial team, especially in a tech startup, has to align with a rapid pace and innovative nature. What are your guiding principles in building and leading a commercial team at Zeelo? How do you make sure it effectively fuels the company growth?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately it's about kind of linked to what I said. We set the culture and the mindset of fast growth and hustle ultimately. So that's one complete guiding principle. That's what we expect for anyone in the company. We want to act with pace, and we actually have a value around being fast. Actually, as one of our values, because we think it's just super important. Not for everyone, but we're kind of unapologetic about that. That's what we like, actually. I think then being dynamic and flexible, like listening to your customers and your clients, like sometimes goes a bit forgotten. So we dynamically change messaging, positioning a lot, actually, to make sure that we're hitting the right tone when it comes to solving the pain points ultimately. And then I think linked to that is the integration between sales and marketing is like fundamental. I haven't seen it work well when marketing's over here and sales over here. It just doesn't work.
Throwing leads over the fence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and because it's the feedback loop more than anything. Our performance, the guy who leads our performance, a chap called Rory. He's bugging us about leads and where they're going to every day, because he wants to know, okay, why did that company click on our ad? What are their pain points? What are they telling you? Like, why have they actually come to us? And he's adapting accordingly based on what's happening on the front line. I think that's like just so important. Otherwise, it's going to be over here, talking about all sorts of crap that no one wants to listen to or read. So I just think
it's the same for so Sarah on our marketing team. So she leads our marketing, and her core KPI. So she's targeted on marketing attributable revenue, and that is, she cannot do that. It's like there is no like self-serve kind of close on the website with the stuff that we sell. It is consultative. She cannot do that without the sales team, and by putting that in place, we now have a team culture where she is invited to and is effectively pushing the sales team, going, what are you doing with my deals? Like, what is going on with those? So they now share that revenue target, and it's been incredibly effective. It's not a top down kind of what's going on with this, who's doing this, what's happened there. It's a kind of team by team, and it's super interesting to watch it, actually.
Yeah, no, exactly. It sounds very similar to what we've been through. It just makes a ton of sense especially when you get like the targets aligned. I think that just makes it just a massive difference.
So entrepreneurs walk a fine line between reward and challenges. From your perspective, what are the most compelling pros and cons associated with being a startup founder, especially in the space that you work?
Oh my God. Don't do it. No. It's there are, look, there's definitely pros. There's also definitely a ton of cons, right? I think, like, firstly, like if you are thinking about it, like just start, because it's the hardest thing to do. Like that is what I'd recommend.
Okay, so you've gone from don't do it to just start. So
but just like think about what you're getting yourself into, because it's all consuming. Like it really is. So I think like pros are like the because it's kind of like your baby, the wins just feel like amazing, and you're so passionate about it that a deal closing feels way better than a deal closing for another company that you may be working for. That just feels great. And I think becoming a founder means you can get stuck into different parts of the business. You can like learn a lot about different aspects of business, whether that be how you pitch to investors, how does the operational processes work, how to run a call center. Like it's all this kind of crazy stuff that I wouldn't have thought I'd learn, but you kind of do end up learning, certainly at the start anyway. And then ultimately you get to pick and choose who you work with, really. So that's also pretty great. And you build a great team, and that's always very satisfying, especially when they're all aligned to the common goals and everyone's working together towards like the mission and the targets. It feels really good to be part of. That being said, like the wins are great, but the lows are terrible.
The lows feel personal.
They do. Yeah, and I'm sure you've been through it as well. But you do, and you go like, why? Like, why have they not working with us? Why are they picking that company? Right? What have we done wrong? And like, you feel like they are judging you ultimately. But I've come a little bit numb to that, in all honesty. So it's become easier, but they do feel bad when it doesn't go your way. And I think like lastly, the biggest con I think with all of it is that whether you like it or not, it is a full-time lifestyle. Like there's just no getting away like around it. Like even when I go and socialize like we did a couple of weeks ago, I'm still thinking in the back of my mind about work in some capacity and worried about one thing, and it does take over your life, like fundamentally. So I if you're not up for it, I would not recommend it at all. I think it's absorbing and draining and really tough, actually. But it can also result in great things. So, and you can do certain things like to kind of mitigate the all-encompassing, have hobbies, make sure your friends are pretty close to you, make sure you go and see them.
Yeah.
But it's tough, and it feels pretty absorbing at sometimes, and pretty, it can affect all parts of your life. So yeah. Do it.
And to be fair, even when we were in the bar, we were talking sales process, HubSpot, funding rounds, all of those things were coming out. So like, I think we were still technically working at that point. So balancing.
How uncool are we?
Yeah. Yeah. But nobody else was talking to us. So yeah, anyway, Balancing mission-driven initiatives like sustainability and achieving scalable growth, obviously not always an easy task. It's difficult to keep those things hand in hand. How does Zeelo ensure that its growth and commercial success doesn't dilute the commitment to its core mission and values?
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky in some regard because it kind of goes hand in hand for us. Like the more we grow, the more impact we believe we're making. So it's quite a unique company in the sense that when we grow, our sustainability credentials increase because hopefully we're taking more cars off the road effectively on a day-to-day basis. We also have like an underlying mission to get all our trips to fully electric by 2030, which is actually quite tough in the bus and coach industry. There's not tons of electric coaches out there. So we feel like we've got a big role to play where we can actually help facilitate a lot of that change. So, but again, like people will pay us for that. So it links nicely actually. And we are quite lucky because of that. But ultimately, if we launch more Zeelo trips, then we're hopefully going to take people off the road and stop them driving in an inefficient vehicle and moving something that's shared and green. And that's really what it's all about. So yeah, it kind of goes hand in hand for us. So we're pretty lucky. So
commercial success is effectively mission success.
Yeah, I think so.
Nice. It sounds like you've done that on purpose. Well done.
Yeah, no, can you believe
it? So I've got 2 questions for you now, and this is undoubtedly my favorite. What's your biggest career fuck up to date?
Bloody hell. There was so many. I mean,
becoming a startup founder, right?
No, actually, I think it was probably that example I gave earlier where we had this big deal. So yeah, just a bit more context now. So we had like this, we had this big deal, and it was during COVID as well. Actually, so it was probably like 15 of us. Like some people were on furlough. It was gonna like get us out of the shit we were in ultimately, and we like built a team around it without really knowing who the decision maker was, what the sign-up process is, when it's going to go live, and they pulled the plug. And it was a very harsh reality in dealing with decision makers and sales process and ultimately qualification. And that was pretty hard because we had people that were literally being hired. We had to say, I'm sorry, it's not quite worked out, and that's terrible. It's horrible. It makes you feel like total shit, and you feel like an absolute idiot and guilty and everything. That was a pretty big fuck up. That was not great, especially when you're telling your board about all these great deals coming through, and they're getting excited, and then you have to go back with a tail between your legs, saying, "Yeah, I'm sorry about that. It didn't quite come off." It's not great. So yeah, I think that's probably one of them.
A learning experience, I think they call that, don't they?
Yeah, you can call that a very painful learning experience. Yeah.
Okay, last question. Who would you recommend I speak to next on the 6 sessions?
I'm working with this great guy called Hector. He's the CEO of a company called Unplugged. They basically build these awesome cabins where, and the whole point of them is that you are having a digital detox. So you book a cabin for a weekend. They physically make you lock your phone in a box, and then you switch off for a whole weekend. And they're like growing really quickly in the UK. And he's a great entrepreneur and like very mission driven. So I can probably hook you up with him. He's a cool guy.
It sounds although you have literally just given me anxiety, the thought of having my phone locked away for a weekend.
Horrible, yeah, it's horrible. But like you look at you go on their site and you see all the reviews. It's like, I can't believe I haven't done this before. Like it's amazing. It makes you feel so good. So yeah, give him a shout.
Barney, thanks for being up for doing a 6 sessions with me. If anyone wants to follow up with you, how do you want them to reach out?
Email me, barney@zeelo.co. Just .co. We haven't got .com. Long story. So yeah, email me. Drop me a note on LinkedIn. Happy to speak to anyone if they have any questions or want to connect on anything. Yeah.
Perfect. Barney, thank you very much and enjoy the rugby.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care. Bye.